Okay, thank you, Franski, for the whole support in the logistics. Welcome, everyone. Let's start, but let's also ensure that we request other colleagues and other friends of ours to keep joining us throughout the whole call. I'm sure we don't have a lot of number of people, but I'm sure they will join while the call actually goes on because, of course, there is a delay in publicizing the event. But it's good to have even 30 people around us. And of course, getting back to the whole idea, whole objective of this pre-consultation. It's a pre-consultation for communities discriminated on work and decent and Indigenous youth on decent work, gender equity, health, and technological justice, which also revolves around SDG 8, SDG 5, SDG 3, SDG 3, SDG 5, SDG 8. And of course, finally, we'll also try to talk about SDG 17. And as the world actually prepares for the 2025 United Nations ECOSOC Youth Forum, and of course, high level political forum, and later on, once we have World Social Summit, particularly youth from communities discriminated on work and decent and indigenous communities shall be meaningfully included in shaping global conversation around development, equity, and justice. Of course, as once we know, as the research says, as the evidence says, we have been the most marginalized youth across the globe. And this pre-consultation actually aims to create a dedicated space for the youth from indigenous and CDWD communities to gather shared realities, co-develop intersectional perspective on these basic thematics. And as we know that this year, the theme of the United Nations ECOSOC Forum is science, technology, and innovation. So we'll also try to talk about these issues while we discuss about the whole interventions we are making. And as I've already mentioned, that the objectives are merely to amplify the voices and leadership of CDWD and Indigenous youth in global policy. And we'll also try to learn who are these communities discriminated on work and decent, who are the Indigenous youth as we move forward with this pre-consultation process. And so I would quickly introduce my colleague, Judy. Judy is a human and environmental rights defender with years of experience advocating for the rights of indigenous community, the Ogaik people. I'm sure if I'm pronouncing it wrong, maybe it would be good, Judy, you can also mention the name of Kenya, as well as experiences in restoration and conservation efforts of their environment and biodiversity uh, in it. Judy is also the executive director at local CBO in Kenya. And she also leads a massive youth network across the globe and is currently serving as a co-chair of United Nations Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, along with two other Indigenous youths. One of them we already have with us as one of the panelists, Laila, whom we'll introduce later. So over to you, Judy.
Thank you so much, Navin. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you come from. And thank you so much for that introduction. My brothers and sisters, in this meeting today, I come to you as a youth from the heart of an Indigenous community. A very strong community that for too long, we have felt the sharp sting of discrimination, the heavy weight of exclusion, particularly within the realms of work and decent livelihoods. We, vibrant and resilient youths of our ancestral lands, carry within us the wisdom of generations and the burning desire to contribute meaningfully to our societies. Unfortunately, too oftenly, our potential is overlooked, our dreams are dimmed, and our inherent worth is undermined by the systemic biases that cast long shadows of our lives. We are not invisible. We are not relic of the past. We are actually the present and the future. We possess unique skills, invaluable traditional knowledge, and a strong connection to the lands that sustain us. We are innovators. We are artists. We are healers. We are custodians of ecological wisdom. But when we seek to participate in the formal economy, when we strive for decent work that allows us to provide for ourselves and our families, we are met with a lot of barriers. These barriers manifest in many forms. Sometimes it is just the normal prejudice, the unconscious bias that leads us to being overlooked for opportunities. Our qualifications get questioned, our capabilities are underestimated simply because of our Indigenous identity. Other times, it's the overt discrimination, the explicit policies or practices that actively exclude us from certain sectors, limits our access to trainings and education, and confines us to precarious and low-paying jobs. We see it in the lack of culturally relevant education that fails to equip us with the skills needed for modern employment, while simultaneously eroding our cultural heritage. We experience it in the recruitment processes that favor those from dominant cultures, often failing to recognize or value our unique experiences and perspectives. We feel it in the workplaces where our traditions are misunderstood and called backward, our languages are silenced, and our contributions are marginalized. This discrimination, my brothers and sisters, is not just an injustice against us as individuals. It is a profound loss for our communities and for the nation, our nations, our countries as a whole. By excluding Indigenous youths from decent work, societies are forfeiting a wealth of talent, innovation, and cultural richness that could drive sustainable development and foster a greater social cohesion. When our youths are denied the opportunity to thrive, our communities are weakened, our culture heritage is at risk, and the cycle of poverty and marginalization continues. But today we are not here to simply just lament our challenges. We are here to raise our voices, to demand recognition, and to advocate for change. We are here to assert our inherent right to dignity, respect, and equal opportunity like all other youths globally. We are here to declare that our Indigenous identity is not just a liability, but a source of strength and a valuable asset. I envision a future where our Indigenous youths are empowered to participate fully and equitably in the workforce. A future where our traditional knowledge will be valued and integrated into modern knowledge, into modern economic activities. A future where our cultural identities are celebrated and respected in the workplace. A future where we will have access to quality education and training that is culturally relevant and prepare us for meaningful employment. A future where our entrepreneurial spirit is nurtured and supported. Thank you so much. I look forward to hearing to more speakers. And what I'll tell you, my friends, the path ahead may not be easy, but we should not be easily deterred. We are inheritors of a legacy of resilience, adaptation, and unwavering connection to our lands and culture. We are the seeds of a very vibrant future waiting to blossom. If we are given the opportunity, we should be given the opportunity and we should be provided with support. And they will see how we weave a future where our Indigenous youths and just other youths who are being discriminated, they'll see us thrive. They'll see us contribute our unique talents and perspectives to the prosperity and well-being of all. Thank you so much, Naveen, for this opportunity. And I hope our voices will resonate with the strength of our ancestors and the hope of generations to come. Thank you so much.
Definitely, Judy. I'm very sure we'll have a very strong movement, which we already are having now. But very powerfully, you have kind of highlighted that the violation of the employment rights is not an isolated experience. And if you look at the systemic exclusion which communities discriminated on work and decent also facing, it's very similar to what uh, Indigenous people are into this. And this is happening across the globe when we talk about communities discriminated on work and decent and Indigenous community. And the way you have emphasized upon the denial of recognition, the denial of right to dignity, and of course equal opportunity due to deeply rooted social hierarchy and cultural biasness, which is very common and which is very deep rooted, and which almost everyone from these communities, especially the youth, are facing. And so, I mean, thank you for reminding again our rights, what we need to do, especially the youth, and how do we need to move forward. And of course, we need to identify those global processes. How do we center the voices of ours? So we'll surely get back to you, Judy, again, because this introduction was very, very powerful. And I would request our moderator for today, Aparna, who's a communication officer and a research associate at National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights. She's based in Delhi. Born into a Dalit family, Dalits who are discriminated on work and decent across South Asia. She brings a very powerful mix of lived experience and strategy advocacy to her work. And she already has an experience of global advocacy as she participated in high-level political forum back in 2024. It would be good to have your experience also as a youth on how to navigate these UN mechanisms, but also how you're focusing on women who are engaged in manual scavenging. And of course, she also has contributed to a short film which highlights the brutal realities of caste-based labor across the country. Aparna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Naveen. That was really nice. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Just to engage everybody here, I'll just put a link in the chat box and I'll request all of you to join it and we'll have a collaborative experience here. Okay, so I'll also share my screen. So if all of us can join this link. Okay, the first question is, where are we from today? Where has everybody joined from? So this is the first question. So you can just pin from where you are in this world map here. India, I can see one India. Okay. More answers. You see 3 answers till now. Okay, so it's like all over the world. Oh my goodness, wow. I can see 4. Okay, 3 from Africa itself. Wow. Brazil. Wow. That's like really colorful, like what we bring to this platform here. Okay, so let me go to the next question, if you will. Which superpower would you choose to fight injustice? So there are 5 options. You can choose one of them. And let's see how it goes. Okay, raise inequality. Heal generational pain. Okay, 2 words for that. More for make system transparent. Okay. Speak truth into action also. It's taking second. Okay. Okay, 13 responses. That's so nice. Okay, I got like around 16 responses. That's really nice. Okay, okay, it's moving, it's moving. It's still moving. It's done? Okay. So let me go to the next one. Last one. One word that you will put for what you feel about justice, what justice means to you. Okay, equal rights, I can see. Freedom from violence. Freedom, Brazil, okay. Decolonization, okay. Equity, land back, okay. That's interesting, right? That's one. Giving space and power. That's really powerful. Dignity, fairness, truth, resistance. What else can I see? What else? Really powerful words coming on the screen. Freedom from violence, acknowledging our pain. Okay, liberation. That's so cool. I've got 18 responses. Wow. Okay, stop moving. So thank you guys. Okay, there's more coming in. Okay. Economic justice, transparency. Okay, thank you everybody for joining in this interactive session with us. Okay, so let's move forward. I'll one by one introduce the speakers for today. And we'll give each speaker like 5 to 6 minutes. And let me again share my screen with a set of guiding questions for them. So it'll be helpful for them to navigate as well. Okay, so let me introduce the first speaker for today is Delphine. Delphine is a human rights advocate dedicated to working with communities discriminated on work and descent, particularly the Wata community in Kenya.
Hello, everyone. My name is Delphine Nyambane and I come from Kenya. I am a human rights advocate working with communities that face caste-like discrimination, especially the Wata community. My focus is on ensuring access to justice and decent work for these marginalized groups. I work in advocacy, community engagement, and human rights reporting. I also support young people, especially girls, to overcome discrimination, poverty, and gender-based violence that is rooted in inherited status and traditional roles. Now, let's talk about what is DWD. DWD stands for Discrimination Based on Work and Descent. It refers to inherited social discrimination like the caste systems and other forms around the world. Globally, it affects 270 million people. For example, the Dalits and Burkina in Asia, Roma in Europe, Haratin, Jongo, and Osu in Africa, and Quilombola and Palenque in Latin America. People born in these communities are stigmatized, segregated, and denied basic rights just because of who they are. Currently, economic challenges and slavery-like treatment is faced by the CDWD youth. We are often denied access to education or forced to drop out early due to poverty and discrimination. Even when we manage to get training or schooling and degrees, we are rejected from jobs because of our identity or background. Many are also forced into traditional or degrading jobs. This, my brothers and sisters, is not just economic hardship, it's modern form of slavery. Girls and young women face the worst. They go through child labor, early marriages, and exploitation, all linked to poverty and the patriarchy. Without targeted support, affirmative action, and safe spaces, this cycle will continue. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Delphine. Thank you. That was so powerful. Let me introduce the next speaker for today. John is a 19-year-old youth leader from Quilombola, Kalunga community in Brazil. John is about to begin his university journey, majoring in public policies and education at Northwestern University. He is here to uplift his community, share his identity, and speak out for the justice and representation. John, you have the screen for 5 minutes.
Okay, hi everyone. I hope you guys are listening to me because my microphone was a little bit lower, but I don't know if it's working. But hello, Gia. I'm from the largest Quilombola territory from Latin America, the Quilombo Calunga, which is located here in Goiás State. And I am also an LGBT advocate and also Quilombola advocate. And I work in a project which is called Tocando em Frente, which is taking forward, where we impact 12,000 children throughout Brazil, taking opportunities related to education and adapted materials for their reality. So we are taking local people, like Quilombola people here at my community, and then we adapt these materials focused on the Quilombola reality. So we're going to show them opportunities that they can engage, and we were taking opportunities based on local references to them. So basically, this year, who is like fighting for justice, for representing Quilombola or Quilombola rights, since I was sick, watching my mom doing that. So I'm here with 19 doing the same. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to be here today. Do I need to answer the question or just to present myself? I forgot that.
You can present as well right now. There's like 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I would like to highlight 3 things here about my community. First, the Kalunga community is a guardian of traditional knowledge, especially regarding medicinal plants. I was one of the responsible to write the Kalunga medical plants, which would take the ancestor knowledge on this book in order to preserve it so we can bring it and take to the next heritage, to next generation, I could say, because our heritage is really important to us. And I carry it on my neck with my protect beads, I could say. And then we wrote a book with this special medicinal plants that we use here. So we bring a lot of herbs that help our medical tradition here that cure us from several illness and headaches and etc. Then I was responsible for writing this book together with my community. It was a collective book, so it was really special for us. 2, the rural reality and the lack of access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. This is really seen here at my community, actually in the territory, because we don't have access to a hospital here at my community. So we are suffering from a headache or something very severe. We need to walk or drive 30 kilometers away so we can arrive at the city. And arriving there, we need to take another transportation to go 9 to 4 hours long to go to another city so we can have access to medical or attend medical surgery or something like that. And also the cultural pride and resilience of Quilombola people in the face of historic invisibility. And yeah, this is the highlights I could say. And also I brought another answers for the questions. I don't know if I can continue. Let me know about it. Okay, so the key barriers of employment and occupation segregation. Here we have informal labor, especially rural and domestic work, is often like the only option for many young people. And there's a lack of public policies, especially aimed at Quilombola youth. Yet my community, like everyone, is working in the land, so we can produce like foods to sell because we don't have formal work, which we don't have this opportunity to insert the Quilombola youth people like working for the council or something related to that. We don't have it. So basically, the discrimination based on racial identity and the general public's ignorance of Quilombola rights. So we also have lack of internet access, like transportation and access to higher education, all limit economic advancement. Also, I think like we need to the need to change is target like public policies that would support Black rural youth, including access to credit, technical training, and higher education. Because this is could be a greater representation of Quilombola communities in policy making spaces, especially in youth, labor, and education councils. We have a few people working on the council, like representing the Quilombola people here at the Cavalcante, which is my city. And we have two people from my community there. So this is a really good advancement regarding to policy making because they are looking for a right, even in a city level. But we are starting here, trying and pretending to and thinking about the possibility of achieving high level of policy making so we can achieve more a broadly thing so we can think and produce like policy make thinking in other communities and to attend more Quilombola people. And I think that's it. I believe building pathway to justice begins with listening to communities and amplify your voice and ensuring we are not left behind. It's like the great way to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. From writing a book to advocacy level interventions, it's really great where you're up to at 19. I'm really proud of you. So let's take the next
Thank you.
speaker. So I'll introduce the next speaker. It is Rojan Periyar, a Dalit trans man from Nepal. Rojan is currently working at PHERC, where he focuses on LGBTQIA+ mental health and community well-being. As committed activist, he has been at the forefront advocating for Dalits and queer liberation, including co-organizing Nepal's first ever Dalit Queer Pride Walk. Through his work, Rojan continues to challenge caste and gender-based discrimination and push for equity, visibility, and justice for his communities. So, Rojan, your screen is yours for 6 minutes.
Hello everyone, thank you so much. My name is Rojan Pariyar and I am Dalit trans man from Nepal. My pronouns are him. I currently work at PHERC Nepal, focusing on LGBTIQA plus mental health and community well-being. As an activist rooted in my life realities, I began working at the intersectional of caste and sexuality in gender identity from few years. I'm also a writer. I will write poetry, ghazal, muktak, article. I was one of the organizer of first Dalit Queer Pride Parade in Nepal, which aim to create visibility and space for those of us who live in systematically erased growing up in rural Dalit family. My experience caste-based discrimination from an early age, being dynamic water, excluded from friend group, and being made to feel unfair just because of my surname. This experience have had a lasting impact on my mental health. Coming to the city as a trans person, being LGBTIQ community, I had to face a different layer of discrimination where my gender identity is policed, my body is questioned, and services are designed only for cisgender people. Hospitals are some of the most violent space for trans and LGBTIQ Dalit person. We face judgmental stage, misunderstanding, a complete lack of privacy, and are often forced to explain our dramatic our identities. Menstruation is still a taboo among. There are not protocol, no language, no acknowledgement of how protective wealth cannot connect to our life. General natural toilet are absent, and this make even the act of us using a bathroom stressful. Counseling service, especially mental health support, um, criticized, but even their most counselor are from dramatical caste group who do not understand I, our queer or caste realities. There are hardly any Dalit or queer counselor. Any Many of us feel re-traumatized after seeking help. For someone like me, the layer of exclusion are not theoretical; they are lived and deeply felt. At school level too, I was humanities due to my caste, gender identity. I faced due discrimination. My confidence was crushed, and this continues to affect me even now. Most queer students are forced to leave school due to bullying, stigma, and lack of safe space. Our identity are seen as shameful, sinful, or non-extant in formal institution. The entire structure, education, legal, and health, is not designed for us. It was not even imagined us. So when we talk about the question, how do gender, caste, industry, and dignitize affect access to healthcare, sexual and reproductive health, and mental well-being? We need to answer. It's not just academically, but from live and it affect everything from whether we seek help to whether we service the system. Despite all this, we are organized, speaking and demanding justice, promoting gender equality and health right with our communities, recruit straightforward legal and cultural respect. Legally, there are many politics, but their implementation is weak. There need to be affluent action, not just empty recognition. Culturally, we need to change stigma and silence through educational reforms, inclusive curricular, and police, political public awareness that include Dalit and queer voice. Intersectionality, school and hospital must become space safe space with gender gender neutral toilets, privacy, uh, and inclusive service delivery. With lead action are already pushing this forward. Through my work with PHERC Nepal, we are advocating for exclusive health, mental health approach, especially for focusing on trans, LGBTIQ, Dalit person well-being. That the Dalit queer pride was also political expert claiming space. Other youth are organizing menstruation awareness campaign, community dialogue, and advocacy for safe school. The future lies is us reclaiming our bodies, our story, and our right to, as someone who has been both hurt by the system and has chosen to fight it. I believe change is not only possible; it it is just urgent and necessary. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rojan. It was great hearing a queer Dalit POV of this situation and highlighting like menstrual hygiene and what you are going through as a queer person. The community highlights like voices out for so many others like you. So thank you so much, Rojan. Um, I'll request Lahila now to also, Lahila's camera is on. So Lahila is an indigenous environmental activist and emerging leader from Kanaka Maoli lands in Hawaii. She also shares strong ties with the lands of the Odam and Yauki relatives across Turtle Island. For the past 3 years, Lahila has served as a Pacific focal point for the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus, passionately advocating for urban indigenous people's right on both local and global fronts through traditional healing practices. So, Lahila, the screen is yours for the next 6 minutes.
Yeah, aloha everyone. My name is Lahala Matos, and thank you for the guiding questions. As I answer the guiding questions, I think I'll start with the first one. And I think that it's important for us in this conversation to remember that as Indigenous people, our physical and mental well-being is directly related to our ability to access land, water, and sky, which means that in modern society today, this ability has been severely impacted, especially for urban Indigenous peoples, due to urban sprawl, urbanization, and settler colonialism. In Indigenous communities, Indigenous people face higher rates of chronic illness, maternal mortality, and mental health issues higher than most other ethnic groups. And these problems exist because of the cultural erasure and ethnic dismemberment that occurs as our communities experience things such as urbanization, which then results in poverty, settler colonialism, displacement, assimilation, genocide, and criminality and incarceration. And in response to these issues, a lot of times current biomedical models, they often fail to accommodate and account for Indigenous healing practices, which then create a cyclical failure and decline of health in these same communities, especially for women and trans or two-spirit, third gender folks. So for us, our access to healthcare, sexual and reproductive rights, and mental well-being is shaped not only by, economic or geographic disparities, but by deeper systems of ongoing settler colonialism, racism, patriarchy, and cultural erasure. Settler colonialism and colonialism as we know it has disrupted our traditional knowledge systems, which prioritize the health of all living beings, regardless of species, regardless of gender, caste, or ethnicity, which means that our mere existence as Indigenous people is already threatened. And when we consider additional factors such as gender and ethnicity, we must realize that settler colonial and colonial ideologies, such as patriarchy, such as capitalism and individualism, those directly harm our access to healthcare, sexual and reproductive rights, and mental well-being. And like I said earlier, especially for women, trans and two-spirit folks, and multi-ethnic Indigenous people. So for us, our traditional knowledge systems have historically and presently embraced and prioritized agency of the land, agency over our bodies, and agency for us in nature to choose whether or not we will multiply. So when considering how our identities affect our access to health, we also need to consider the ways in which our identities have persisted to live on, despite all of these challenges, and the reason why preserving and practicing cultural traditions is essential to our survival and health. Now to answer the second question of how we can do this, promoting gender equality and the right to health within our communities begins first with recognizing that these are interconnected struggles rooted in justice, equity, and self-determination of all people, not just our own communities. To be Indigenous is to carry a legacy of resistance, a legacy of healing, and a deep relationality with land, body, and spirit. But access to health, rights, and decent work can't be achieved without dismantling the colonial systems that devalue our identities. In order to promote gender equality and the right to health within our communities, we need to center cultural knowledge and practices, expand education on these traditional ways, and in a way where it's not just a study of a culture, but it exists beyond a study of a culture and we're actually living it. We also need to provide networks of support for ultra-vulnerable populations and expand community-based healthcare and traditional methods of healing for all. And to me, community-based healthcare can look like many things. So like, for example, low or no-cost community clinics would be something like that, or even just sharing traditional medicine that you grow yourself with neighbors who may not have access to any form of healthcare. And so then that brings me into the next part of the question, which is about examples of youth-led actions. So for me, within my own community, I've seen youth-led actions with youth organizers creating networks of community support, engaging and encouraging people to volunteer for land-based projects. And at least within many Indigenous communities and within my own community as well, land-based work is really versatile in the approach to health, because not only do we see it as a way to improve mental health because of connection to land, but it also helps in improving local food supply. So we need to be very versatile in our actions and understanding the multiple ways and things that it can address within our issues in our community. And while something like that may be better suited at a local level, as we scale up, we find that education can be a really great tool as well for improving health through advocacy and harm reduction. For example, globally, we see organizations that work towards expanding access to comprehensive sexual education, especially for those in rural communities, which is especially relevant for Indigenous people. And while we need to ensure that our work is intersectional and works both locally, nationally, and internationally, we also need to ensure that our work as youth is intergenerational. As youth, we need to involve and engage ourselves at multiple levels of activism, and we need not only a seat at the table, but we need to build trust with others to earn a spot in their circle as well. Because maintaining and building relationships with people, land, and organizations is really important in creating real change that we can see. And in order to maintain and nourish those relationships that we build with people, that means that we need to always ensure that we're being inclusive. And so for those of us who do hold privileged positions, we have a responsibility to advocate for others in all spaces that we're in, and to understand the moments where we need to step in, or maybe the moments where we need to listen. And so this work isn't necessarily about building our portfolios or collecting accolades, but this work is instead about making ourselves available to others to promote their well-being in the times that they're not able to. And while this work is and should be personal, gender equality and the right to health can only exist in our communities if we ensure it exists for all communities. And yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Laila, for bringing a Indigenous POV to it and highlighting how environment and gender and bringing all these aspects together. Thank you so much. And now I'll give the screen to my fellow moderator, Milena. Milena is Indigenous Palestinian human rights lawyer and co-director of the Migration, Youth and Children platform based in India and Europe. In her professional capacity, Milena serves as the founder and the chair of the MENA Working Group on the International Criminal Court. So we can take it forward from here, Milena. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Aparna. And thanks to all of the youth that are joining us and all of the other panelists that we are having today. I think this is an extremely important conversation and a very timely one as we see the different atrocities happening all over the world. As we're moving on to the third conversation, this will be probably more interesting for those of you that are experienced in science, technology, innovation, and the question of building a cross-movement solidarity for learning, sharing, but also connecting with each other, which I think is the most important part about this. Before I move on with the guiding questions, I would love to introduce our two very impressive panelists that are joining us for this conversation. The first panelist is Natalia, who's a Roma human rights activist, visual artist, curator, but also cultural heritage expert from Ukraine. Natalia currently serves as the deputy director at ARCA, the youth agency for the advocacy of Roma culture in Ukraine, and she's also the co-chair of AURA, the Ukrainian Roma Advocacy Alliance based in Germany. Natalia also coordinates the history and commemoration section at the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture in Berlin, where she uplifts Roma history, memory, and cultural expression across Europe. Her work bridges the worlds of art, activism, but also heritage to advance justice for the Roma community. So thank you so much, Natalia, for joining us. We also have our second panelist, who's Sachin, a student based in Geneseo, New York, with a strong commitment to understanding and addressing caste and descent-based discrimination, especially in India. As a Dalit, Sachin brings lived insight into how caste systems operate, both visibly but also invisibly across borders. He's deeply inspired by the legacy of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar and grounded in the belief that education is a tool for collective liberation, and is passionate about engaging in global conversations that are surrounding raising awareness, helping dismantle oppressive hierarchies, with a vision that is rooted in justice, dignity, but also amplifying marginalized voices to build a more inclusive future for all. So thank you as well to you, Sachin, for joining us. We do have a couple of questions for the two of you, and maybe I can get started on the first one, which I think could be particularly interesting for Natalia, based on the work on keeping up the culture in your community. And the question is, how can we reclaim access to digital spaces, but also to technological tools that are serving as means for empowerment, advocacy, but also for systemic transformation? So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Milena, for the introductions. And before I start answering this question, I don't know if we should go like one by one answering each question, but I prepared some small intro about Roma youth to give a background for the audience. They would understand the challenges we are facing with. So to give you a short overview, for the beginning, I will just emphasize that Roma youth, they face with several layers of discrimination, being a minority in Europe and as a young representatives, especially women and girls who have intersectional layers of their identity. They face with multidimensional discrimination, unfortunately. And this vulnerable group among Roma communities, I mean, in my work, especially is a first one to pay attention and to help them. And using the data from 2022 of European Union Agency for the Fundamental Rights, who made a survey in several European countries as Croatia, Czechia, Greece, Hungary, Italy, Portugal, Romania, Spain, North Macedonia, and Serbia, it shows that the picture with education overall in Europe for Roma youth is not bright. Around 68% of Roma leave schools before the age of 16. Only 27% of Roma aged from 18 to 24 have completed their upper secondary education, and less than 1% of Roma attend university and colleges. And me coming from Ukraine, I also know the background of Roma youth there, and during the war times, I can tell you that education is a very challenging topic because many youngsters, they hide in backgrounds, basement spaces. They don't have quality education or none of education at some periods, and it's already lasting 3 years in a row. Before that, we had 2 years of COVID, so it's already 5 years of education with really a low level of education. I want to be honest with you, and it will have for sure some consequences. It will be a generation with lower education skills and so on, with challenges in a job market. Yeah, and so when we talk about Roma youth, I think education is a topic one to be addressed. And when we talk about access to digital tools for empowerment and systemic transformation, so I think we should move from access to digital tools to ownership of it. And same for Roma and different indigenous communities, youth in particular. We must be not only consumers of the technology, but also creators, coders, and digital strategists and digital platforms. It's a power to tell our stories, to raise our voices, to document human rights violations, and also to organize cross-border communication, I think. So I can pass the floor here for another panelist, and I would love to continue with other answers on your questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Natalia, for the very insightful introduction into the challenges that your community is facing. I think when we speak of Roma youth, this is often forgotten in the conversation as well. And we are very happy to have you here to shed light on this too. Perhaps we can move on to our second panelist, Sachin, who can tell us a bit more about the different synergies with indigenous, but also traditional knowledge, local technologies. And I think we would love to hear as well, based on your experience, what you think would need to be done to address the digital divide, but also the exclusion that some communities are facing. So over to you, Sachin.
Thank you, Milana, and hi, everybody. My name is Sachidananda Rabidhanandar, and I'm joining you today as a Dalit youth. As someone who grew up between India and in the United States, as a part of a global community of youth, of young people fighting against system of exclusion, both online and offline. Today, I want to speak about something that many of us here know deeply about, what it means to be shut out of the future, simply because of who you are or where you come from. You see, caste didn't stop at the airport when I moved to the US. It followed me into classrooms, into conversations, and eventually into the digital spaces. The screens didn't protect me. In fact, they sometimes amplified it. The United Nations uses the term discrimination based on work and descent, or DWD, to describe systems like caste, inherited slavery, or social segregation. This form of discrimination affects over 270 million people across the world, from Roma communities in Europe to Dalit communities in South Asia to Haratan and Osu communities in Africa. So let's talk about the digital divide, not just the gap in internet access, but the gap in power. The tech world, like many others, wasn't built for us. If we don't have access to STEM education, if our languages aren't in the data, if our names are flagged by the hiring algorithms, then we are not just excluded, we are erased. Now more than ever, we need to reclaim digital spaces as tools for transformation. For example, filmmakers in India like Paranjit, Mari Selvaraj, and Vetrimaran have been at the forefront of cultural reclamation in the film industry. They've used cinema not just as entertainment, but as a tool of liberation. Through their films, they've opened up spaces for Dalit and other marginalized voices, breaking decades of silence and stereotype in the mainstream movie industry. They've told our stories, and in doing so, they have shifted the narrative, both nationally and globally. They've shown us what it looks like to reclaim a medium, to shape it with honesty and vision. And what they've done in the world of cinema is exactly what we must do in technology, by creating space and opportunities for CDWD youth to tell their stories, to write their code, to innovate with purpose, and to be at the forefront of building inclusive society with a youth as the catalyst. This means we need representation in the tech industry, not just as users of tech, but as designers, as builders, and decision makers. We need affirmative action through scholarships and mentorships for tech education. We need safe and online spaces and strong protections against caste and race-based hate speech online. We need representation in governance to be represented on AI ethics boards, in climate tech, and in places where decisions are made. We want to recreate our own narrative, and for that, we need to be able to tell our stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. I think that was a really powerful end of our free conversations that we've had for this pre-consultation. And I think I completely agree on the part of not letting anyone take away that space that should be reserved for us. As we're now moving on to the Q&A, I would love to invite also our youth to share their impressions, but also their experiences in the chat as we're speaking. I think we have a really great number of youth from all over the world with very different experiences from your communities, and we would love to hear in the chat how you have been able to overcome them. To perhaps get started with some additional questions, we are now trying to understand what do we want to learn from each other, but what can we offer each other as well? How can we build stronger connections between our movements for joint action, but how can we strengthen our voice and representation as well? And I think this is a very deep topic to my heart as a Palestinian, as we're experiencing a genocide, an illegal occupation, but also an apartheid system that has been a disadvantage to us for 76 years. I myself, not only as a human rights lawyer, but somebody who lived in a refugee camp as a child, who has been a refugee for that period of time, I think learning from each other and understanding how we can build solidarity, especially with the increasing number of difficulties that we are facing. For instance, for somebody like myself from a Palestinian community, my identity is very political. For some reason, every time somebody introduces themselves from our community, the question is always, what do you think about solidarity? What do you think about resistance? And unfortunately, I do not want my identity to always be political. Also, the question of which some of our panelists have raised on resistance. Many people from my community believe in armed resistance. We believe in taking our land back that belongs to us. And even in this moment, I can see that while solidarity is growing, there's a lot of room for improvement to understand how we can build a stronger community that would intersect with all of the different challenges we're facing. As we're speaking in this moment, I have family members in Palestine being bombed in Gaza, and I think every time we hear some of these stories, I think there's so much potential to raise more awareness, to build that knowledge. And we also have a particular shout out to a youth who has joined us today from the Cox's Bazar's refugee camp, Saif al-Islam, who's also in the room with us, who has been an incredible network member to not only myself, but also to many others, who has been facing incredible challenges as part of the Rohingya community. And we keep learning from each other on how we can support each other in the best way. So as we get started, I would love to hear from some of you how you have been able to strengthen yourself. So please feel free to raise your hand, and then we will be able to unmute you. If you cannot speak, we will address your question or reflection. No need to be shy. Please feel free to just raise your hand. We can already see that there's a first reflection coming from Namen Waipir, Mongolia, addressing that in her country, digital device discrimination manifests as unequal access to technology and digital literacy, particularly affecting rural residents, the elderly, and individuals with disabilities. This disparity hampers their ability to fully participate in the digital society. Thank you so much. Also from Mongolia, a country that is not very often addressed in general, and I think we really want to thank you for being here and share more. Our wonderful panelists are also obviously invited to join the conversation. So please feel free again to raise your hand or type any reflections in the chat.
Natalia's hand was up. Yeah, Natalia.
Wonderful. Natalia, please go ahead.
I have just very short intervention. What I see from all the speakers and what we share experiences in the world, very similar. And I think it's good that we have this synergy like today to speak up, to hear each other. And I would be personally very interested to be a part of some broader projects where we could bring our expertise, how to work with Roma topics in Europe, how together we can make some networking offline meetings also for different youth in Europe. We would be glad to host Dalit communities and others. Yeah, because it's a lot of cultural heritage to be shared between each other, and how we can think how in future we can create digital platforms for guarding such heritage and passing it to the next generations.
Thank you, Natalia. I think we all share the same understanding and the same need, I think, for building that community, because I think something we learned from today's pre-consultation is no matter what part of the world we are from, we all face very similar challenges and are here exactly joining today for that. We would love to hear from others in the room how you have been able to build any connections, if there have been particularly good practices that you've been able to build up on, to share solidarity, but also to increase awareness on particular issues. Naveen, please go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't see any other hands. Oh, we have Freely. Maybe we'll take Freely's. Can come in later.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Freely I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm a young lady and I'm also a social worker, a recent graduate in social work, and I've been following the last speaker's question. I've been doing various campaigns, individual campaigns. I've been to address issues that are affecting the young people, such as issues to do with mental health, issues to do with drug and substance abuse. I physically visit high schools, universities, and colleges addressing and talking to the young people about issues to do with mental health. I also do online talk show. I launched a talk show that is named the Global Youth Talk Show, whereby I invite speakers from all over the world and we address different topics that are affecting the young people, from economics, social issues, and yeah, many more that are affecting the young people. And I also use the media here in Zimbabwe to reach out to the young people, discussing about the various issues affecting the young people, such as mental health. Yeah, those are some of the things that I've done. I also collaborate with various churches so that I can easily reach out to a large number of young people. Okay, I'm done.
I think Milena's.
So much for we love the idea of a talk show. This um could
Is there a network issue on Milena? I think we're having a network issue from your side. Oh, I think we lost her. Maybe she'll join back. Meanwhile, I just wanted to add, if we have other hands also, I just wanted to add that we also need to identify how actually we can come together. I think this pre-consultation itself is something is one of the steps we actually thought about identifying issues which are quite similar to communities discriminated in work and decent, as well as the indigenous communities, and how both the communities have been facing systemic violence since ages. It's not even like for 100 years, but more than 1,000 years, and have been kept away from the rights and be it not only civil and political rights, but very specifically socio-economic and cultural rights. So we need to identify how do we bring both the communities together, identify those specific rights. No doubt we might be having separate ways, but our journey, but the destination is almost the same when we talk about rights. So I think we have lost our moderator. Oh, Milena is back. Milena?
Yes, thank you so much, Naveen. Apologies. I think I'm in a very bad place for my internet connection, so I might have been kicked out. But thank you so much for taking over. As we have 2 minutes left for the conversation, please feel free to keep sharing your ideas in the chat, and this will for sure not be your last opportunity to be with each other and to learn from each other as well. I will now perhaps hand over back to Naveen to move on with the final part of the pre-consultation.
Thank you, Milena. We can stop sharing the screen, Aparna. But yeah, thank you, Aparna. Fine, perfect. We'll quickly, fortunately, we just got Yugratna sometime. She was already busy with the preparation for the ECOSOC Youth Forum, but thanks to her for taking out some time. And we move on to Yugratna's part. As I'll also quickly introduce, I'm sure most of us already know her very well, but she's currently serving as the organizing partners for the major group for children and youth, a UN mandated platform that amplifies the participation of children and youth in global decision making. And her work continues to inspire and mobilize young people globally in the fight for not only for climate justice, but also intergenerational equity. She is an environmental justice advocate and also a youth leader who has been at the forefront on global climate action since the age of 13, when she became the youngest person to address the United Nations General Assembly. Shugaratna, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naveen, and thanks for the introduction. And very happy to, be here with the group. And thank you also for inviting me to be part of the session. I hope you can try to turn my camera on so you can see me for a second. I wasn't able to follow the full discussion, but we have been working very closely with the constituencies that are organizing this session. So the CDWD stakeholder group, and of course the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. And I just want to, reiterate the fact that as the major group for children and youth, we have done a lot of advocacy to make sure that youth that are coming from marginalized communities and from communities that are generally not heard of have the space that already exists for them, right? Like to participate at in these processes. And specifically for the ECOSOC Youth Forum, there was something done this year which led into more expansion of spaces for young people from grassroots communities, and which is what basically we worked with DESA and other UN bodies involved in the forum to expand what we call as the Youth Partners Group of ECOSOC Youth Forum, which refers to the sort of the collective coordination group, or you can think of it, like a bureau in a way of youth that are involved in the central planning of the youth forum. Generally or traditionally for many years, it's only been MGCY and ICMEO that were part of that. And this year we were able to expand that to include 3 or 4 more specific different groups, one of which was grassroots stakeholder group and grassroots voices, in which CDWD has been big part of, and also collective seats for some of the minority groups. So Naveen from this team has been very much involved in the central planning of the youth forum, and that is, to make sure that your voices are represented directly and not through any other group or network, because you don't need that. You should have your own voice and own space, which already exists for you to be able to claim and fully engage and participate. I also want to say that when it comes to meaningful youth engagement, there is a need to really move from in many ways from practice, from theory to practice. And essentially, when we look at the world right now, right, like whether that's democratic backsliding or there's more and more shrinking space, as we call it, for civil society, so lesser space for civil society and youth voices to be heard. So we really believe in power of youth globally to drive that transformative change. Children and youth, especially those that are in front lines, must be at the forefront of our front seat of driving these changes at UN and beyond. So meaningful youth engagement should keep moving from theory to action. And I also want to point out that there is a big need, whether that's the UN system or decision-making spaces in general, to embrace the diversity in which young people organize themselves on local level, regional level, global level, and that we continue to advocate for equitable participation for all. We see many a times certain structures, whether that's at the UN or other parts of the system, where they want to tell young people on how they should be organizing themselves and have this kind of ideological imperialism on them, right? That, oh, this is how you should be engaging, and that is how your engagement should look like. And we reject that, because we believe that meaningful youth engagement must be relevant to day-to-day realities of young people, and power of defining and shaping what engagement of young people looks like lies in their own hand themselves. And that's an important point I wanted to mention to you. So within the major group for children and youth, like I mentioned, with the expansion of the partners group, but also through the designated seats in the coordination team that exists for both the CDWD stakeholder group, youth representative, and the Indigenous caucus, we hope that there is more coherence and more push on some of these things as we move to the high-level political forum and World Social Summit. And I also want to mention that, when we are working in some of these UN processes, especially what we saw in last year's Summit of the Future. We often see some of these discussions, which are about people on the ground, often co-opted by certain foundations and think tanks that just do background research about things and then talk about it just because they happen to be either based in the US or they happen to have more resources to be able to access the UN, or because historically, where the UN has been positioned in New York. We have seen some recent movement with some agencies moving to Nairobi, but then again, majority of UN operations and decision making continues to be in global North countries, and which indirectly leads to more access of groups from there. And we really, at least I can speak for organizing partners, both Same and myself, we do not want to see that happen again for the social summit process. The discourse of this has to be led by youth groups that are, and youth groups and civil society groups that are on the front lines of these issues. And that should not be spoken for. They should be speaking their own realities themselves. They should be bringing their own realities themselves rather than having non-representative or international organizations or think tanks channel their voices. And that is a strong, perspective that we believe in when it comes to global youth representation as well. And we've tried very hard for the Youth Forum happening next week to make sure that many young people are able to come. I know it's not perfect. We would like to have, all of you in, for that matter, engage, but there are also opportunities to engage virtually. So I'm going to put a link in the chat where you can see there's a virtual policy networking session that's happening on the second day of the Youth Forum. There's also ways to get involved at the Youth Blast on Sunday, which will be hybrid. So even if you're not in New York, there are ways to contribute to the actual outcome document of the forum, because that's written by young people globally, not just by the participants of the forum, as it reflects a broader, diverse set of views. And in the end, I just want to, really reiterate the commitment that we will do everything that we can and continue to do everything we can to make sure there are spaces for young people that these spaces belong to. And I don't want to have the savior complex, right, that we are creating these spaces for, these spaces are already yours to claim, right? They already exist for you guys to be there and to be represented. So there is the need to make sure that there are enough resources and enough support given and solidarity given, I would say, to make sure that you're represented and engaging. And we are not creating new spaces, but those spaces are already yours and youth from frontlines to be engaging in and being part of. I also come from India. I come from a very middle class family in India, and I graduated from Columbia last year in university because of the scholarship that I had, and it's a privilege to be what I'm doing. But then again, making sure that we keep these discussions connected to the realities of young people would be very, very important. Over to you, Naveen.
Thank you, Yugratna. I think thank you for being part of this pre-consultation. I think obviously you were very busy, I'm sure, but thank you for taking out these 5 minutes. And of course, your presence has always brought strength. You has always brought solidarity to every conversation we have been having, and this conversation as well. And we just truly appreciate the continued efforts which you have been putting as an organizational partner, as a climate justice advocate, and of course, now you again reiterated that there is a deep commitment to ensuring that the voices from the grassroots are heard. And it's not like you're just speaking. I've literally seen you engaging with grassroots organizations, grassroots youth, which is very powerful. And this is and their voices are not only being heard but also respected in the global platform. And your support for the rights and dignity of communities discriminated on work and decent and indigenous community youth is, of course, will always be deeply valued. And of course, we look forward to the future collaborations. Yugratna, thank you for your presence, Yugratna. Now we have Mr. Paul Divakar. I'm sure I don't need to introduce him, no doubt, but he is a leading voice on caste and analogous hierarchies worldwide, extensively working across the globe on discrimination based on work and decent. And the idea was to bring him, was to also listen him about his own experiences, how he has been building up the movement since very, very young age. A distinguished human rights activist, policy advocates, and of course, budget experts dedicated to the rights of Dalits and communities discriminated on work and decent globally. co-founder of the National Campaign on Dalit Human Rights, and founder and convener of the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Decent. Paul, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this is an experience of how, even though we are present, if the organizers don't unmute you, you will not be heard. I just had this experience. But thank you very much for this wonderful webinar that you are organizing, and really excited to see that this kind of a collaboration has taken place, and it's taking place and growing stronger. I would like to acknowledge Naveen and Judy, who have brought this thing together, organizers of both the Global Forum, Youth Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent, and also representatives of the major group of Indigenous, brought these two critical, stakeholder groups as part of major group of youth, children and youth. It's really a very encouraging and a very innovative way of getting things. I think this intersectionality of looking at and appreciating these different aspects of the issue, not only from one's point of view, but also from the other parts of the seclusion that the communities and the society that we are experiencing. Most of us are fighting this aspect of invisibilization. And I think many of the stories that I've heard that you have so beautifully articulated here have, are a shock to many of us. Still, when you hear that this is not just in one's own country, but it is also these systems are excluding in an almost similar fashion across the world. Whether it is Asia, many of us may have heard that these aspects of exclusion are mostly, they say, okay, when you find caste, you say it's only one particular country in Asia. But then you see these systems are very clearly being replicated. And that has not been heard by the policymakers, because if you don't hear that, then you don't have any policy to clearly address them. And you know that after several years, the Africa Commission has finally passed a resolution saying that these systems of social stratification need to be addressed. So the aspects that have been so articulated by Daphne and others in this webinar have been heard by the policymakers. But it's not just now Africa Regional Commission, Africa Commission on Peoples and Human Rights need to hear this, but we need to ensure that this is heard across the world, and then need a clear way in which the data needs to be brought together, and the demand for making policies to identify and to have mechanisms to address this system. So I'd like to congratulate you, because you have so beautifully started this, and this voice, I think it's so important. And you may think that, oh, okay, we are only doing this at the in the virtual level, but I think this voice will definitely reach and say this is not going to be tolerated, and we have to have any mechanism, and a powerful mechanism, to see that these communities are taken note of as citizens of their respective countries, and generations of discrimination needs to be put an end, and so that you have a very equal life with dignity. So I'd like to congratulate also the major group of children and youth to ensure that this is not just included as one of the participants, but concerns of this are completely churned up. And this way of where you have brought the indigenous, it's a very interesting thing. I think all of us know very clearly, indigenous is one of the earliest experiences, maybe about 30 years ago, they have said, we are not just like in one country. We spread across from New Zealand to Australia to Europe to Asia to Africa and to Latin America, the North America, wherever we are, there is people of indigenous, and there the colonial system excluded them. And even though they are spread across, even though they may have differences in terms of race, in terms of color, in terms of other ways in which they are being excluded, they have brought together in one group as an indigenous. And today we find the powerful voice. Of course, the issues need to be still settled. It's a very powerful voice. Now, similarly, I think while indigenous is a colonial feature which has brought in this exclusion, the communities discriminated on work and descent are pre-colonial forms, which means they did not come with the colonialization, but they were existing in our own lands, within our own races. As citizens, they are excluding fellow citizens, and those are the other tales and the narratives that you have brought. So whether it is pre-colonial system or post-colonial systems of exclusion, what you are bringing as a group, as a generation, which needs to carry this leadership, that you have to address these together. So I think you have a much greater challenge than some of the earlier generations we had. And I'd like to congratulate you for articulating this, for bringing this, and making sure that your voice is heard. One last thing I would like to share is this space is very limited. And sometimes there is so much of a aspiration to ensure how all of us can come. And I think this is there everywhere. This is there at the national level, and definitely it is there at the UN level. So I think this aspect, what Yugratna was saying, is making sure that we share this through virtual participation, make this available, and also not only those who have access to virtual and digital tools, but also how many of our youth who are out of these systems are also brought into this. I think that innovation is something that we'll have to think through. And once again, I would like to congratulate and then encourage that these will be continued to be carried on in the same spirit as you have done at the several national level, that you'll also carry this at this UN level to bring real justice to all those who are aspiring. So Jai Bhim, Opraroma, Lentai, Uhuru, and Salve.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, maybe you can also explain these words if possible in next 1 or 2 minutes.
Yes, sorry for taking this time, but these are slogans that we have, that people have given in each of these regions. Salve is one. Jean is also here from Kalunga community, from Kalunga area in Brazil, representing the voice of the Quilombola. So one of the voices which say Salve is a term that they would use. Uhuru from the African continent also represents freedom. Lentai is for the Buraku community in Japan, who says, no more we wait, we demand freedom. Jai Bhim is of the Dalits of Asia, who invoke the name of the leader who had spread this and demanded deconstructing the system of caste in the region. And Opraroma is about the Roma communities who were earlier known in several names, and they've united the several communities across Europe who are known in several names, Travelers, Manush, and several others, and brought that long live Roma communities. So these are the 5 slogans that we bring whenever we greet each other and we bid goodbye for further action ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Indeed, you have taken 2 more minutes from us, from the youth, but last 2 minutes have been the most powerful aspects of your presentation, indeed. And thank you for all the support and guidance you have provided, not only to the Dalit youth, but also globally to the Roma, Quilombola, Haratin, Osu, and of course, whenever there is a possibility of providing that support to either to the indigenous people as well. So as we conclude the today's pre-consultation, I think I'll just hand it over to Judy for quick closing the giving a closing speech, but also I would request you to stay for 1 or 2 more minutes. Judy has to leave, and Judy has somehow managed her time because she was hospitalized, she was traveling, and I think we also planned this session 3 days back, and then she was like, no, I assure you, Naveen, me and one more person from the community will surely ensure that we are part of this process. And I was really worried, but somehow we have a strong participation from the indigenous group as well, and of course the perspective which we are carrying forward together, Judy. So Judy, I won't take you much time. Can we have you on the floor, Judy?
Thank you so much, Naveen. And I also would like to thank every participant, every speaker. There's been very amazing insights from everybody. And I'm really happy when I see young people stand up and advocate for their own issues, you know. And something that has really come out strong for me is that we young people are very resilient, we are determined, and we are ready to contribute. But one thing I will tell all of us, individually, we cannot do it. We need to team up. We need to come together. We need to form a very strong alliance for us to achieve the kind of freedom that we are pursuing. We also need allies, maybe other individuals, organizations, governments with us, who can stand with us to make sure that we dismantle this kind of discriminatory structures. Sisters and brothers, let's move forward with a shared commitment so that we can create a world where every young person, regardless of their background or descent, has the opportunity to thrive and reach their full potential. This is time for meaningful action. Our future and the future of a just and equitable society depends on us. And with that, I wish you all a great evening, great morning, great afternoon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you very much. So, Yugratna, you want to add something before we move forward?
Yeah, I just wanted to, and sorry, I'm eating parallelly while being with you all. I just wanted to build from what Paul said earlier, right? So discrimination, as most of you would know, is a cycle, and it's very hard to get off that cycle. So if there are young people, there are communities that are discriminated, the coming generations continue to be discriminated, and you already know that, but I want to add on to say that they are also discriminated across different systems. So it's not only in your national context where you feel that, but also when you go to UN or multilateral decision making spaces, there's always that barrier or an unsaid barrier that you always face and you feel, because it somehow just exists, right? So that's one of the things we have tried to very much um, structurally basically break down. But then also you cannot structure, like, people cannot, it should not be up to certain group of people to structurally break down that barrier. It should be about bringing those people that are already from those communities to come up and share their stories and perspectives directly. So you're not, it's not like I'm making a space for you. It's more like this space is yours. It's always been yours. And that's how we approach the Major Group for Children and Youth. Is more like a movement where it is led by youth from grassroots and global south, and from communities that are less heard of, and that should be the leading story of this. And I'll be happy to share with Naveen on what are some ways you can get involved virtually in the Youth Forum. Like I mentioned, there are like a lot of virtual side events. I think over 50 of them that are fully virtual. There's also 2 or 3 things in the official program that are happening virtually, including a virtual networking policy session on 16th April. And it would be great if, Naveen and Judy, you were to host like we are calling those breakouts, but what they really are, they are like policy bubbles in which there are different discussions being held, and then outcomes of that would feed into the Youth Forum's outcome documents. If you want to do one virtually on this during that time, we can arrange that. You have like a designated space where some of the recommendations you heard today come forward and feed into the outcome document of the Youth Forum. So I'll stop here, and I just want to again thank all of you, and also both our focal points, Judy and Naveen, for putting this together, and also agreeing with Paul said. I think it's first time we have seen something like this. So when they say that whenever history is being made, you don't realize in the process that it is actually being made, you realize it much after. So I think it's one of those moments of where 2 very strong constituencies are coming together and even convening this, right? So it's a really important moment what you guys did today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yugratna. 2 strong constituencies coming together, and we'll stay together for sure. Thank you for those strong words, Yugratna. And of course, we should not forget the amount of support you have provided. So thank you very much for this, Yug. And of course, there will be virtual platforms. We'll keep sharing the links. Please be part of it. Don't think that you're not a youth, so you don't want to be part of it. Please, everybody is a youth. I'm sure Paul is one of the best example of this. So let's not talk about the age. Let's talk about the strength which we have in our mind. Before we conclude, I would request Pranjali to kind of tell us about the side events which were happening. Also, this time we have 2 side events, Pranjali.
Yeah, thank you so much, Naveen. So like Yugratna also mentioned and Milena also mentioned, that we will have more opportunities to connect further. There is a virtual space through which we can participate in the coming ECOSOC Youth Forum. So just to highlight, we also have two side events, which is being organized by GFORD in partnership with UN MGCY and our regional partners as well. So Aparna, can you share the screen, or do you want me to? We'll also post the links on chat box. Alima has just shared one link for the first side event, which, as you see on your screen, Harnessing Science for Decent Work and Economic Inclusion of CDWD Youth. This is happening on 16th April, where we would discuss about how we can leverage science and technology for our empowerment. And we will also explore youth-driven solutions that are existing and what we can build up on. So we would love to see you here. It's on 16th April of 1:15 p.m. EST. Please see the time zone where your country will be falling and join us. The second side event that we are having is the one on your screen. It's on 17th of April at 1 p.m. EST, New York time. And this will be focusing on the SDGs 16 and 17, peace, justice, and strong institutions, as well as how we can leverage partnerships and how we can explore partnerships for the global goals. And this will focus on youth from CDWD, and especially also focusing on queer persons, non-binary individuals. Those are very significant voices that need to be at the forefront because we have been excluded from policy implementation. So this is a this is a good opportunity for all of us to come together and give our inputs, share networks, share knowledge that we have, and we would love to see you here. I'll post the links one more in the chat box. Look forward to seeing you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranjali. Of course, we thank Milena and Aparna, who agreed to moderate it just 2 or 3 days back, and they were busy with the proceedings. Aparna had to give almost 24 hours. I'm sure you might be very irritated, but I'm sure the way you have moderated, both of you, has been brilliant. And thanks, Milena, for bringing up the Palestinian aspect altogether during these difficult time. We are with you. We are with Palestine, and of course, thank you very much to Judy. I'm not sure if Judy is with us right now, but thanks to Judy, as I already mentioned, even in difficult times, she ensured that she's part of the process, and not only part of the process, she's actively involved and collaborating in every possible manner with us. So Yugratna, of course, I've already mentioned. Then we have the speakers, very young speakers. There was no doubt some amount of anxiety roaming around, but the way people have performed is like brilliant. Brought up the grassroots experience, including John. We have Sachin, we have Natalia, we have Dolphin, then we have Laila, and of course, Rojan. Beautifully, you have brought up the aspect of what a trans Dalit actually goes through, looking at the intersectional aspect. So. I won't take much time, and as we conclude this important dialogue, we also reaffirm that we really need to realize the importance of health, the importance of gender equality, importance of decent work, and of course global partnership. All these are the specific goals, SDG goals, but how youth from communities discriminated on work and decent and indigenous community, it's not only urgent, it's non-negotiable, is something which I feel like we should keep it in our mind. And ensuring access to quality healthcare, gender equality, decent work must begin now when we talk about CDWD and indigenous people, and it needs to be dismantled by our own efforts, all these. So as we move towards global platforms like HLPF, ECOSOC Youth Forum, and World Social Summit, let's also contribute and ensure that there are countless regional and national spaces across the globe where we can intervene. This ECOSOC Youth Forum is just one of the events which are happening now, but there are countless things happening across the globe. Let's use these platforms. Let's use these platforms as Dalit youth, as Roma youth, as indigenous community youth, and ensure that we have our voices being heard now. And we need to ensure that they have to hear us now altogether. Nothing for us can be done without us. So Jai Bhim, Uparoma, Lente, Salve, Uhuru. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.